So you've reached the step of the research paper that is called the Desert Isle Outline. Why is it called that? Well, the idea is that this is an outline that is so complete that if you were stuck on a deserted or desert island, like the one in this picture, you could write your entire paper with just this outline. So even if you had none of your sources, none of your note cards, none of your Noodle Tools items, you could still write your paper. So in other words, it needs to be an outline that contains all citations, contains your works cited page, and contains basically all the facts, either paraphrased or quoted, that you plan to use. And it needs to have a structure for what your paper is going to include. So I'm going to take us back to the sample research paper that you all examined before. And just clue you in on a couple things that your outline really should include. So if you looked at this sample essay, you read that it starts with not going into the thesis right away, but it starts with a hook. And that's a part that you want to put in your outline so that you don't forget to add it. So for example, Dr. Gary Karnow, who runs an online seminar on grant writing, says, "Grants fund ideas, not stuff." And then it has a citation. So that's one type of hook. You could have a hook that kind of gives a overall sense for what your topic is going to be about, like this one does. Some people instead start with a captivating story that relates to their topic. I remember a student who was looking into funeral practices from different cultures listed some of the more unusual traditions that she had found in her research, and then essentially listed them and then said, what do all of these have in common? They are all ways that people treat relatives or friends who have passed away. So the idea with a hook is it draws your reader in, makes them interested in the topic, and then following the hook would be any background information that might be needed in order to help us understand what the research question is. And so with this particular person, they decided to focus in on the types of things that grants lead to. And because this was a research paper that was specifically about the style of writing that is used in grant writing, this student used this kind of set of sentences as their thesis. And so it answered the research question in a concise way, but it also alluded to some of the specific aspects that he was going to get at in his paper. I'm going to keep scrolling to show you that towards the end of the paper, you want to wrap up with a compelling conclusion. And a way to think about your conclusion is maybe remind readers of the most salient aspects of your topic, and then tie up with sort of why does this all matter? So this student, for example, talks about writing grant proposals opens the opportunity to almost anyone qualified to undertake a project that cannot be funded by that person or group alone. Without grant writing, the innovations that scientists and engineers develop would not be able to leap off the design documents and become reality. Instead, with funding, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, revolutionary ideas can be fully or at least partially realized, improving the future landscape of research and technology. So you can see it really hammers home why grants are so crucial in the world. So going back to how this all relates to your Noodle Tools document, I'm going to bring us back to the dashboard of Noodle Tools. This is a different topic than I've shared with you before. So this is the research question is, what is the history of the toilet and how has the design changed over time? So in order to get to the outlining stage, you want to make sure you have your note cards complete. So your note cards, of course, you can access by clicking note cards, or you can also see, have I read all my sources by clicking on sources and seeing okay, I read this one, I made 6 note cards for that one, 4 note cards for that one. Uh-oh, I never read this source, I should go in and read it. So it's possible that sometimes you realize you have enough information without reading all your sources. The thing you want to keep in mind, though, is for this paper, it's required that you use at least 5 separate sources that are different from one another. Okay, so once you've inputted your note cards and you've got a compilation of many different facts that answer your research question, you want to start thinking about the basic structure for your paper. So what I've already done for this particular topic is I've already created some outline topics. Yours will not look like this if you're just starting out. So let me go to a project that has no outline started so that you can see what a blank one looks like. And the things that you want to think about are that it doesn't have to be the outline that you end up with. It's kind of thinking of it as a structure, like a skeleton. So some basic things you probably want to start out with are, hook, because you know that a hook needs to be in there. So you have to click the edit button. So hook, and maybe I don't know what the hook is yet, but I put it in there so I remember to do it. Adding a topic for background information. And then keep that pretty brief because remember, once you dive into your paper, you can provide additional background. So maybe just put it background information to reveal research question. When you want to add a new topic, you do that, add topic. Somehow I've scrolled over. Okay. So you know what I might do is actually make this whole thing, this whole heading, the intro paragraph. Introduction, because it may or may not be just one paragraph. And then instead, I'm going to make a subtopic, the hook. And I haven't yet determined what that is. If I want to make something a subtopic rather than a new thing, I just basically go like that. And then maybe my last thing that I want to include in my introduction is my thesis. Thesis statement. So if you're wondering what does a thesis statement look like in a research paper, it needs to be a concise answer to your research question that lays out some of the main takeaways from reading your sources. And I recommend having your thesis statement mirror the structure of your paper. So maybe wait to write your thesis statement until you've designed your outline. You know that you are going to have some sections between introduction and conclusion. So for now, maybe you can call it a body. And of course, we'll add more later. And then an additional section for conclusion. And what you might do for a subtopic is, I want to add a subtopic, and that's going to be return to most salient points. And then I'm going to add an additional subtopic, and that is going to be, oops. Okay, I'm going to add an additional topic, which is going to be why does all of this matter? And depending on your topic, of course, the specifics of that will be different. And then what you do is you look at your note cards and sort of group them and say, okay, I have a number of different ways my research question has been answered. how can I break them into sets and then create sections in my paper for those answers. So when you do that, you'll of course expand this body section into those specific categories. So let me show you what it might look like once you've done that. So as you can see for the toilet topic, these are all my note cards. The ones that have little check marks here the check mark means that it has been added to my outline. So we'll get there in a second. So here's my hook. I ended up saying that I wanted to find a statistic or quote that shows how influential the invention of the toilet was. And then I actually found a note card that had a fact like that, and I dragged it over to that section so that I can use it there. And then my thesis answers my research question. And then I decided that I would start with just the name of the name toilet and the fact that that in itself has changed over time. And then a section in my paper was going to be about early things that were like toilets, but not exactly type toilets. And then another section about what toilets are made out of. And then a section about some of the issues that came up, such as smell. And then a section chronologically moving towards the present day. So talking about today's toilet, and then toilets of the future. So there are many ways of thinking through your topic. One could be thinking of it chronologically. One could be think about starting with the basics and then getting more complex as you move along. And then finally arriving at your conclusion. So what these little symbols mean when they have a rectangle with lines, it means that there was a note card that was dragged over to basically go with that topic. So that is sort of a dragging process where you look at your note cards and you say, okay, I think that fits with this topic. And then you drag it over. And then once it's attached, you'll see it there. And it does put little check marks to show you that you've already included that fact so that you don't accidentally include it twice in your paper. Okay, so that takes some time. Once your outline's at a place that you're happy with, this is an important step. So we want to then go to okay, so over here, and Moodle Tools has moved this since last year. So if you look for it in the old place, you will not find it. So when you're ready to export this as an outline, there are a few steps you need to take. So you go over to this area where it says print, and you want to choose outline with note cards. Okay, now this is where unchecking some of these is going to make your cleaning up process a little bit easier. So I like to delete history creator, cues, tags, URL, and keep everything else. And try exporting to Word. You can do Google Docs. That's worked fine for students in the past. Sometimes the margins have been a little funky with Google Docs. Word seems to be a little cleaner. However, Word also doesn't have everything perfect. It inserts these random lines, which you have to go in and delete. But that's not too hard. So your cleaned up outline is not going to look like this. It's going to basically take the information here and clean it up so that it looks like an outline. So right now, there's a lot I can delete in here. I don't need to have find a statistic or quote about this. So I'm going to clean this up. And I'm basically going to keep the direct quote. I'm going to put it in quotations. And this all comes from my note card, by the way. I'm going to move it up here. And then what I don't want to get rid of is the last name of the author, but I can get rid of everything else. Then I want this to show up as a subpart of my intro. So there's a little bit of cleaning up that you have to do for that.